gamers, and welcome back to our journey through FF13, the most mixed reception game of the bunch, and one that I am just enjoying a lot so far. I can see the problems. I can see them much earlier than we did in FF15 if you followed that journey. But my name's Preach, and this is day 2 of FF13, where we really got to start sinking our teeth in. This was about 6 or 7 hours of play today that we're going to be covering. The first thing I want to talk about is the unlocking of the Eidolons. I knew they were probably coming in some form, right? They're such a big deal post 6, really, and they've only got bigger since then as features and mainstays. They do exist, obviously, in the other games, but like in FF2, you just go inside Leviathan. You don't really see anything, and they sort of increase over time, and now they're like a big mainstay. People are always like, where's Shiva? Where's Ifrit? What's going on? And it becomes pretty apparent in FF13 that each of our little gang is going to get their own Eidolon in order to do things. Here's the thing. The first one I got was for our Lord and Savior Snow. And I like Snow. I'm so excited when he comes on screen. And because you just know he's going to do something ridiculous. And that is such a joy to me. I don't know why, because I absolutely get 100%. I'm not a moron why people are like, I hate this guy. He's clearly written for the perspective of a kid thinking this guy's cool. But at the same time, I just have a big smile on my face whenever he's just like... Like, the fact that his idle animation is just him slapping his fist. Constantly. Like, ready to pound and ground, baby. He's ready to ground and pound every step of the way. And there was a little scene in the gameplay I had today where he's just at the beach and people are chilling and he's just stood next to people. He's just like... It's so dumb. So stupid. But he's been separated off from the group. This was actually a big bummer because I like Snow being around. I actually quite like his gameplay. He's the tank of the group. And they remove him. And I was very worried about this because there is a tradition in FF where they decide that they are going to segment off the parties in certain ways. And obviously you have your favorite characters and the characters you like playing. And that leads to you ending up often with teams that you don't want. But there's a counter to it, is that you also end up learning those teams and what makes them strong and how to work with them. And so there's that benefit of them. And then ultimately when you get your favorite character back, you're like, oh, okay, I feel good freedom right now. But Snow's been separated off in the story to dig out his girlfriend. He's going to dedicate his life to digging out his crystallized girlfriend, which I still don't understand. And it's almost hilarious to me that this is a story point. And at some point, this has to make sense. Because... when you get chosen by the Lassie, you either do the focus that it gives you, which it vaguely hints at what you're supposed to do, and you win by having eternal life but being turned into an ashtray. Which, for me, raises way more questions. Are you conscious? Are you aware? This is horrible. I'm frozen in time. This is terrible. Am I, like, just dead, essentially? But I'm a crystal, so what, I look shiny? This sounds way worse. And if you fail, you turn into a mindless ghoul, which seems way better than just being trapped eternally in crystal. So I assume the end of the story is the whole story seemingly revolves around rescuing Sarah as the main point. That will decrystallize her at some point. Something like that is probably going to be happening to make sense. But where are the rest of them? Sarah can't be the first one to have completed a focus. So where the hell is this, like, mausoleum of crystal people that are all like, these are the winners, right? These are the victors for all time. Oh, fantastic. This is amazing. But anyway, Snow gets separated and he gets found by all these people dressed in blue. Initially, I thought this was the people of the Pulse. The Pulse, if you are up to date with the story, is a race or a nation or people that were at war with the people of Cocoon a long time ago, and they've now been separated out. And there's a very strong hint in the game that each society has filled, or at least definitely on the Cocoon side, has filled its people with just endless, what I believe is propaganda. That the other, as it's known in the psychology, which is the Pulse, are monsters, cruel, vicious, slimy, brain-eating beasts, and... even being around them corrupts you endlessly. It's like touching the warp and having fucking, like, the Lord of Death or Nurgle come and touch on you. You become corrupted and twisted. So much that you need to be ousted from society, right? And people believe this like a religion. So when these people looked all different in uniforms, I was like, I think this is the people of the Pulse, because I inevitably believe right now is that when we do eventually see the Pulse, which I believe we will, they'll just be, again, a normal bunch of people, and maybe even they're filled with propaganda about the people of Cocoon who live above ground. These above ground monsters that attack you and murder you at all steps. But in all this fight, Snow is overwhelmed when suddenly the Sisters of Shiva appear. Now, I kind of suspected this was Shiva because of the blue sort of snowy introduction of them, but I was like, why is there like two of them? This is like weird. I mean, I know Shiva is sexy in a lot of games, but now there's like twins, which is like, okay, this is turning up. Weird, interesting thing happening here. So I'm probably going to have to install the FF13 fix. Due to the resolution changes on PC, there's actually information that's supposed to appear when you scan an enemy that does not appear as base in the Windows version. So very important if some of you are like, oh, I'm going to give this a try. It doesn't seem as bad as people said or whatever. Or I want to come along for this ride. Just bear in mind that with the Eidolon fights, they're gimmick fights in which there's something you're supposed to do that's outside of the norm in order to capture the power of the Eidolons. In this case, you were supposed to do something defensive. Now, it will tell you that in game. It's like, the tutorial says, oh, like, for example, the twin sisters of Shiva will respond better to defensive abilities because they have a separate bar. It's not just about HP and defeating them. They have a separate bar you need to fill in order to capture their essence. And in order to get that bar to fill, you have to do the gimmick. Otherwise, you don't have time because it's a timed effort in order to get this done. So I was like, oh, okay, so we probably switched to Sentinel, which is the tank stance, essentially. And what do we do here? So what I found is that I can time my block for certain attacks, like its ATB attack, and that fills the bar pretty successfully, and enough for me to capture the Eidolon. But this also happened again with another Eidolon where I was like, I don't know. And then people were like, oh, you're supposed to have an information window that tells you literally what to do. You don't have it, and it's because of the Windows, the Steam version of the game. So I'll probably install the fix for that. Okay, then we capture Shiva, and she turns into a motorbike. So cool. Oh, so cool. I was like, this is just insane. So Snow earns himself a Shiva motorbike. And then we never see him again, really, until the very end of the play session, which was really kind of sad for me. He's off. He's captured by what I believed was the Pulse. Going back to the rest of them then, I see the problem where people are calling it the corridor game. Now, the corridor style of gameplay, I'll be totally honest with you, I'm not that bothered about too much. I find it way more egregious and annoying when it's like FF13, where it looks relatively open, but it's really not. The only bits you could travel to are like going to be battle arenas in the future or a pointless chest with nothing of any remote value in it. Having a clear, decisive line, like, and I've also kind of got used to this, right? This was in FF12. It was similarly in FF10. This is not unusual or strange to have this playstyle. It's also in FF7 Remake. I haven't played Rebirth yet. That's going to be our capstone game. So that element of it, like it actually being very clear on the map that it's a straight line corridor with offshoots where you'll definitely find loot and a couple of multiple paths to choose from with shortcuts, I'm all right with. I'm like, I don't see this as a big problem because FF's been doing this at this point for like 3 or 4 games. It's not a weird thing. The problem is, and I am noticing this, is a lot of the way FF13 is paced. And pacing is different than the design. Like the corridor design, sure, okay. I kind of like the open world, like 7, I think, and 6 did it very well, where there's obviously weird things in the world that you're coming back to later. And 9 did that as well. I do prefer that. I'm not stupid. But I'm okay with this. However, FF13's pacing is more a case of, okay, you're going to do a very, very long corridor section with not much happening, just a lot of battles and some small advancements in story via just passive dialogue that's happening with the characters. And that kind of outstays its welcome. And then it's offset by really gorgeous, beautiful, elaborate, long cutscenes. Now, they're really good as well, but they're also kind of outstay their welcome by the end because they're very, very long. It's put down the controller. It's Hideo Kojima time. Grab your popcorn and watch what is essentially a mini movie. And I'm sure at the time this was billed as a massive marketing piece. It's like, we have these like gorgeous, really super well done mega cutscenes. You do, but your pacing is slightly off. At least at this point in the game, the pacing is slightly off. The combat sections could do with being a little shorter with more interspersed cutscene action, so the pace is not so stop-start. Where you're like, okay, we're just kind of fighting the same enemies. Because the enemy variety is not amazing. So you're fighting the same sort of battles. I think I fought Robot and Bomb, I don't know, like 8 or 9 times. You can skip a lot of the battles, but like they're also in the way of things you want to do to progress the area if you've got a little puzzle to do. So I do see the elements of that being like, that is an end against the game. Like, which is a shame because this combat system is shaping up to be one of the best. Absolutely one of the best. It's very fast, and as people were calling it auto battler, certainly after playing FF12, I was like, oh, are we going to be doing that again? Where we just sort of, yes, we get our commands right, but for the most part, the basic battles are just interruptions in my walks between story elements. The combat system is very fast-paced, and also the star system. Okay, the star system I'm using, as frustrating as it is working in letting me know you're probably not doing things as good as you can. And I have that World of Warcraft Mythic Raider brain where I was like, I can do better. And I'm noticing things like, okay, I got 4 or 3 stars, but I was 1 second over the recommended time for this battle. What could I have done better? Okay, and then I started to learn. I started to figure out that you can customize the paradigms, that you can swap them into, the different stances of all the players. For some weird reason, the pre-made ones are never the ones I want to use, which maybe is a hint I'm doing things wrong. So I immediately, when I get a new team, I'm like, okay, I want to shift the paradigms to my own ones. And you can make your own custom ones and delete the others and remake them and do whatever. And which ones you want to start out in, which is great. But now I got very confused as to why the stagger bar kept draining. I was like, why is this happening? Like, sometimes it was draining, like, immediately to the point where you couldn't possibly keep it up. Sometimes it would linger for ages. I was like, what is going on? And I thought it was a case of building up the overall stagger meter. And people were like, you need to read the data log on rolls. I was like, really? Okay. Probably something I missed earlier in a tutorial, because there's a lot of tutorials here. FF13 leans very heavily on the data log. And it's clear, at least for now, that they have a really elaborate world. There's a lot of phrasing, a lot of names dropped. It very much reminds me of Mass Effect 1, where the beginning couple of hours of the game are walking around and learning about all the different races, how they interact. It's just like, this is the world, and you need to get this all in, and it's like an encyclopedia of information that's thrown at you. It doesn't want to do that in FF13, because I think they realized, like, if we start doing more exposition, it's just going to kill everything. So they've leaned super heavily onto the data log, and they constantly update you to tell you what the hell is going on. And there's like 9 or 10 of these per chapter of just 2 or 3 pages of dialogue to read through to understand what's going on. And they're doing the same with the combat. Like, the combat menu already, I think, has like 20 entries of what's going on. But I did figure out, like, what they call commandos if you have a commando in the party, the stagger bar will drain less. Ravagers cause the stagger bar to fill. So you want a combination of both of those when you're trying to get an enemy into stagger. However, Ravagers will manage to do more attacks that actually work on the stagger meter. So you have an instant combination of, like, Commando and Ravager to get the enemy to stagger, and then going all Ravager during stagger to maximize that. Sentinels cause the actual stagger bar, once it's triggered, to drain slower. So if you want to get a huge damage multiplier, you'll probably want something like twin Ravagers and a Sentinel in order to drag out that bar as much as possible. But I'm sure then the min-max offset is it better to have like 3 Ravagers or 2 Ravagers and a Sentinel? So you have 3 Ravagers that are all pummeling into the boss, or 2 Ravagers with a longer lasting bar. All this kind of stuff happens with medics that give overall boosts to healing. If you've got one of them, it'll actually boost the healing of the whole party. Saboteurs, raising up the debuffs and stuff. So there's all that going on, which means the gameplay is designed for you to constantly be switching around your paradigms. And that's great. It's super fast to do. I wish we could certainly keybind some of them to like the D-pad. So you've got your regulars that you want to use instead of holding the shoulder button, scrolling, and then activating it. So it's like 3 button presses. If you could just D-pad over to each paradigm, and then you would, like, this is my favorite. This is how I like it. I use these 3 almost permanently. to see what's going on. So I'm going to work on that a bit more, because there are definitely fights that are just taking a touch too long. Whether or not I should throw in some debuffs. There's some buffs to throw out as well, with like Braver and Faith and things like that, so I boost their damage. Don't always want to do that in the little trash fights, but maybe it's worth. I don't know. Also unlocked the upgrade system. This was a little confusing. So all the little random bits of materials and stuff you pick up allows you to upgrade your weapons at the save points. And what you could do, or what the game wants you to do, instead of having like really advanced weapon drops, which might still happen, is you will upgrade a weapon multiple levels and then it will cap. But at a certain point, you're going to be able to transform a capped weapon into a higher tier version of a weapon, which will then allow that to be upgraded even further. And also, you just kind of pile the components into them as a form of XP. They're like consumed as XP. However, certain ones will give bonuses. So if you put like a certain, this is how I understand it right now. If you put certain claws into it, that will give you an XP multiplier of 1.5 or whatever, which will allow you to use less components to get that weapon upgrade, and you can be a bit more efficient on how you use your drops in order to boost up your weaponry. I've played around a little bit with this. I'm going to do it a bit more. There were definitely ones that gave like 1.25. So I had like a 1.5 multiplier, but then I added something else, and it doesn't tell you what it does, but then it changed to 1.25. I'm like, oh, okay, so that was maybe a bad idea, and I should look for things that either don't do any change, because I already have it 1.5, or give 1.75 or whatever like that. So I'm kind of curious where the system goes. I've upgraded some weapons, but I'm very wary of like just throwing everything at them and having an empty inventory, but everyone's got a nice weapon. And also, I'm not sure how it's still early game, so do we get better weapon drops? I don't know. I think ultimately weapons are coming down to what stats you're utilizing those characters for. So if you've got a black mage, you probably want a weapon that leans more towards the magic stat. Simple things like that. Let's move on to what's going on in the story then. So ultimately, the story is going in different directions as the characters are split up. The main party, the bulk of them, they're moving off into trying to get to Eden. Eden is flying around, and destroying Eden would be a severe blow to Cocoon and bring down this whole thing. Lightning wants revenge for her sister. All that kind of stuff is going on. And the others are kind of just along for the ride. They're just going along with that as it's happening, right? So it's moving through the areas to find a way up to Eden and ultimately start attacking Cocoon, because the main focus of the story right now is, what is the focus of the group? They're all marked by a Lassie, which means if they don't do their focus, they either turn to, either way, they either turn to a ghoul or they turn into an ashtray. Whichever one is preferable. Apparently the ashtray is better. And so on the one hand, Snow believes that what Sarah's last words were, which is, you need to save Cocoon. So that's what he believes this should happen. We should save Cocoon. On the other hand, the others are like, Cocoon is horrible. They like massacring civilians just because they may have come in contact with Pulse. We should bring down Cocoon. So there's got this diversion going on in the party. Also, we're very aware, at least it's been made apparent to me, that Vanilla is a Pulse citizen. Or has come from Pulse. And there's also an indication that the others know it. And even though they constantly are still indoctrinated into this religion and they badmouth hardcore Pulse, there's a strange moment where Saz is like, sorry. Like, he knows that she's Pulse. But it's not been made super, super clear, but that's what I read, is like, do they know? And if they do know, they're the biggest jerks of all time, because they're constantly saying that, like, Hope is as the youngster of the group, and obviously freshest to indoctrination, he's like, yeah, all Pulse are corrupted animals and we should burn them all. And Vanilla's like, like, she's constantly like, yeah, okay, like, you know, she's gonna be from Pulse. So that's going on there. That's okay. And on the other side, though, is the big story, which is Snow and what I thought was the Pulse army. It's not. It's the second half of the Cocoon army that's like the Royal Guard or whatever. The Guardian Corps, I think they're called, who are flying around on Eden, which has seemingly immense technology. And they are miles ahead of everybody else, and they're much more professional. And I met Sid. Young, sexy Sid is around. This is the Sid. I liked this Sid. People were calling this the worst Sid. He hasn't done enough in the game yet for me to even remotely make a proper judgment. He's just stupid, sexy Sid right now. But then we get the backstory. And this is what I was talking about, these massive cutscenes. I think this thing was probably 10 minutes long. Really trying to drive in the how much Sarah and Snow love each other with the most over-the-top, like when she finds out she's marked by a lassie and she's going to have to either be a crystal or a ghoul or do a task, and she's a monster because she's been touched by the lassie. Snow falls to his knees and can't believe it. No! All this kind of stuff. I was like, yeah, dude. Get it, Snow. I got it. It's so 90s teen drama. It's so Dawson's Creek. It's so Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's all of those shows that definitely I watched as a young teen as like, oh no, what will happen, right? Like, this is insane. But as obviously I'm a bit older now, it's like, oh, this is... I see what they're aiming for, but God, it makes me smile and laugh so much. They're standing on the edge of the pier as the sunset goes down, and it's beautiful. It still holds up to this day as how beautiful it is, but it's like, our love will never end. I'm like, that's right, Snow, because you're the king, and you're going to save us all. And I'm very much enjoying it. I'm very much enjoying it. I'm very interested in how it starts to play towards mid-game, which we're probably going to be heading to very shortly, and see if these opinions change. But for now, that's where we're at. So I look forward to talking to you tomorrow, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.